And you can go to the 105.3 The Fan Twitch channel for that. The YouTube channel as well, broadcasting Extra Innings live. Extra Innings is brought to you by our friends at Uber Eats, delivering home run deals all season long. All right, we got some calls coming in at 877-881-1053. Before we get to the phones, just want to share some tidbits, some takeaways from tonight's game. First of all, to some extent, this was just one of those nights where it wasn't their night. They didn't get the breaks. They didn't earn the breaks, you could say. I'm not, deflecting and saying, it was just bad luck. But just one of those nights. It's going to happen. I don't think there's anything that was overly alarming about tonight's game. I think one thing that we saw play out tonight that is going to be relevant, especially early in the season, is the Rangers are going to have to win games in the middle of the inning. And they're going to have to win games in the middle innings because they've got three starters in their rotation, Dane Dunning, Andrew Heaney, and Cody Bradford, who it seems like the brain trust will feel most comfortable using 2 times through, maybe if things are going really well, extending beyond that. But we even saw with Dane Dunning yesterday, as strong as he pitched, he got 2 times through, and then that third time started to run into a little bit of issues. Third time through, the Rays drew 3 walks and hit 2 home runs against Dunning. And then they went to the bullpen. The Rangers did. I think Dane Dunning, more than Andrew Heaney and Cody Bradford, has demonstrated an ability to get maybe through a third time. Whatever the case, though, 3 of the 5 guys in the rotation right now, and we'll wait to see, what Michael Lorenzen looks like, but 3 of the 5 guys are maybe 2 times through guys, which means that they're not as likely to get you through 6, more likely, somewhere around 5 innings. Andrew Heaney was good tonight. It was 4 1/3 innings worth of good, though, unfortunately. 4 2/3 worth of good. And, that meant you had to get, multiple innings of bullpen coverage. And so you need Yerry Rodriguez. You need Jake Latz. You need those guys to be effective. And, both guys had some inconsistencies. Jake had, ended up with 2 scoreless. Yerry Rodriguez, you kind of saw a little bit of both sides of the Yerry Rodriguez coin. He had stretches there where he looked really good, and then he gave up that home run to Isaac Paredes that just barely stayed fair. So the middle innings are going to be really important for the Rangers this year because I think a lot of times they are not going to get through the middle innings, 4th, 5th, and 6th innings without going to the bullpen. And depending on the night, they might not be able to go to their high-leverage guys in the 6th or maybe the 5th, depending on who's available, who's not available, all the different factors. So winning games in the middle innings with your arms and not just relying on your bats could be important for the Rangers this year. Defense matters, right? 4 unearned runs, that makes the difference there tonight. Jared Walsh gets charged with the error. To be honest with you, I kind of think that's more on Adolis Garcia. Look where that ball landed. Look where Jared Walsh was when he tried to make that play. How many first basemen are typically in position to make that play? That is usually the right fielder's ball. I thought Adolis was a little bit slow, being honest, in breaking in. Jared Walsh, was calling for it the whole time, and, it's his job to call for it until he gets called off. But I think that, Adolis would tell you after the game, hey, I probably got to be there on that one. But, hey, it happens. It's not a big deal, right? As great as this team was defensively last year, they weren't perfect, and they weren't perfect tonight. Andrew Heaney had a little bit of bad luck on the first run, the single off the bat of Yandy Diaz off his glove. You might say, hey, you got to know where your infielders are behind you, and you've got to just let that ball go and let your middle infielders make the play. I do think that there is a skill to that, and I think that it is wise oftentimes for pitchers to do that. But sometimes it's tough luck, and it's not easy to just say, when the ball's coming at you, don't touch it. And Andrew Heaney's a pretty good defender as well. So, he's made a lot of really nice plays defensively since he's joined the Rangers. He's always been a good athlete on the mound, just a little bit of bad luck there. But on the positive side, I thought it was really nice to see Leote use his arm. Leote's got a strong arm, but it's not something that's benefited him in games. It looks great. He's one of these guys, you take infield and outfield, it would look great, but he's got to make that an arm that is more practical, getting outs with the arm. And he did a nice job. He got Randy Arozarena there in the 8th inning. That was nice to see. And then the final thing before we get to the calls, and then we also evolve into a conversation about Josh Young and the various branches of that. Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford. Evan Carter is slumping to begin the year, and that's okay. That's going to happen. He's clearly not in a great place. Here the last few games, he started to expand. He's clearly trying to get out of this, and that's all right. This is not something that should go unexpected for a young guy, and the Rangers are still finding ways to score plenty of runs. Obviously not tonight, but plenty of runs without him. But hopefully you can turn that around, because one of the ways you deal with losing an all-star like Josh Young is you get incremental gains from multiple people. It's not necessarily just one person. And then with Wyatt Langford, it was a 1-for-4, but it was still a really impressive 1-for-4. Hit the ball hard, got robbed his first time up, could have had hits on 2 of his 3 other at-bats, and then he almost beat out that infield single. And that is not something that most guys would be able to do. As a matter of fact, he did beat it out, but the Rangers did not have a review available. They weren't able to review. Had they reviewed it, he would have been ruled safe. A pretty impressive speed there for Wyatt Langford. All right, 877-881-1053, 877-881-1053. Going to get to the calls in a second. First, so let's pause for station identification. 10 seconds away here on your home of the Rangers, 105.3 The Fan.
March is here, and it's time for tip-off. Are you ready for wall-to-wall basketball? Specs has got you covered. With a huge selection of handcrafted brews, canned cocktails, and top-shelf spirits, Specs is the perfect assist for your game day celebration. Take a time out and feed the fans with Specs sweet and salty gourmet snacks. It's time to crash the boards, and Specs is your 6th man. Specs, the fun starts here.
All right, back here on Extra Innings, the Rangers fall to the Rays 5-2. Extra Innings brought to you by our friends at Uber Eats, providing home run deals all season long. All right, let's go to Jose in Arlington joining us first here on Extra Innings, here on your home of the Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. Hey, Jose.
Hey, Jared. Appreciate you taking my call. So, just kind of touching base about tonight's game. I kind of feel that, I kind of touched base on this last night with Josh being out of the lineup. It's definitely something that we're going to feel going forward, and I feel his presence was kind of missed a little bit tonight. And I know we have the depth coming in, but it still was kind of a concern going forward with mine. Now, my next question is the bullpen with how they were pitching or with how they're pitching right now. Is that something that you feel that's going to be getting a little stronger during the year? Do you feel like that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on as far as like we did last year? Appreciate you taking my call. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. Listen, it's easy to say, well, the Rangers scored 2 runs, so they missed Josh Young. At the end of the day, the Rangers last year were without Corey Seager for about 6 weeks early in the season. Corey Seager was the best player in the American League, not named Shohei Ohtani, and the Rangers found a way, right? And so, if they can overcome that, there's zero reason why they couldn't overcome, and I don't mean this disrespectfully towards Josh Young, but you got to be able to overcome one player being out. And I don't think that tonight was because of that. I think they lost to a good pitcher in Zach Eflin. It's obviously easy to say, oh, well, first game without Josh Young, and clearly they're missing him. But, I think both can be true. I think this offense can still score plenty of runs, and they could miss Josh Young. It'd be nice to have him. But, I guess you think about his spot in the lineup or who played third. The combination of Smith and Duran went 1-for-3 with a double and a walk. So at the end of the day, again, this lineup is obviously better with Josh Young than without it. That's not what I'm saying, but really good teams have to be able to overcome the loss of a single player. Now, if it's the Braves and Ronald Acuna Jr., I want to say, all right, that's tough, but they won a World Series without Ronald Acuna Jr. Remember, he got hurt. So, you can do it. And if you're a really good team, you've got the depth, you're able to do it. And you can't tell me that a lineup with Simeon and Seager and Carter and Garcia and Langford and Jonah Heim, all all-stars or guys who we believe to be all-star quality, is not enough to get the job done. There are going to be nights they just don't score. That's just the reality of it. And then Jose asked about the bullpen as well. I mean, here's the deal. I don't think that this bullpen is going to be viewed upon as the best bullpen in baseball or anything like that. I don't think that it's a group that's going to be seen as this feared unit that, gosh, you can't be trailing the Rangers after 5, otherwise you're toast. But I do think it's a good group, and they've pitched well. I mean, the bullpen so far this year, a 2.33 ERA. So Yeri Rodriguez gave up the home run. He made one mistake. He gave up an a little dribbling single prior to that. The Rangers should have been out of the inning before that on the error. So you look at this bullpen so far this season, 19 and a third innings, they've allowed 5 earned runs, right? That 2.33 ERA, opposing hitters batting 203 against the bullpen. So if this is what the Rangers are going to get from their bullpen all year, I'll take this, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think this bullpen's done a really, really nice job so far. The Rangers fall by a score of 5-2. Let's go back to the phones. Thomas and Keller joining us at 877-881-1053.
Hey, Jared. I just wanted to say, in replacement of Josh Young, I think it's a really good move by the Rangers to bring up Forsythe. It's an unfortunate situation, but I think he's going to play well for us. What do you think about that, man?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Thomas. I think Thomas means Foscue. You mentioned Forsythe, Logan Forsythe, former Ranger, briefly back in the days we'd like to forget of this rebuild. But yeah, I mean, so Justin Foscue, let's get into that, and we'd love to hear from you at 877-881-1053, 877-881-1053. The roster move was this: Josh Young to the IL, Justin Foscue recalled. Recalled is the technical term because he's on the 40-man roster. But Justin Foscue has not played in the majors and is still awaiting his major league debut, and he'll possibly make that tomorrow. But Justin Foscue was not called up to be this team's third baseman. Justin Foscue was called up to replace Ezekiel Duran as this team's platoon first baseman because Ezekiel Duran now is going to have a larger responsibility at third base, especially against the lefty. So, prior to Josh Young's injury, Ezekiel Duran would likely play first against most lefties. Well, now you're probably not going to start Josh Smith against any lefty, and so Ezekiel Duran will get the start at third. You need someone at least to consider as a platoon option at first, and that would be Justin Foscue. Is that the only way he's going to get at bats? No, not necessarily. It could be used as a pinch hitter in the back half of games, depending on the situation, and he could probably get a start here or there, depending on what's going on. But right now, because this team is in win-now mode, the priority is not like it was, say, in 2021, where if in 2021 Justin Foscue was called up, the priority would be, let's get this guy at bats every game. He needs at bats. Let's, whether it's a DH or first or second, we got to find a way to get this guy in here. I think right now it's just, hey, we'll get you at bats when we can, and you just need to make the most of them. And that's not always the easiest thing to ask for a young guy, but that's why sometimes for a young guy, much like we saw with Ezekiel Duran in the second half of last season, sometimes when you're playing for a team competing for a division and ultimately a World Series, being a young guy isn't always as easy because development is not the team's chief worry. The chief worry is winning. So Justin Foscue is going to get treated differently on the 2024 Rangers than he would have had this scenario played out on the 2021 Rangers. With that said, I'm excited to see him get his opportunities, and I hope that despite the inconsistency of those opportunities, he's able to take advantage. It might only be for a couple weeks, because what happens when Nathaniel Lowe comes back, right? Maybe the Rangers then send down Justin Foscue and make another decision, make another move, a guy who maybe better suits their needs. There are a lot of scenarios, and we can start considering that when Nathaniel Lowe's closer to a return. He's still multiple weeks away. What the Rangers are going to do at third base in place of Josh Young is a combination, in all likelihood, of Duran and Smith. Now, it was Josh Smith who started tonight against the righty, Zach Eflin. Ezekiel Duran is typically the guy who's going to start against lefties. Does that mean that Josh Smith is going to start against righties and thus probably have the lion's share of the time? I think that remains to be seen, but my guess is Ezekiel Duran will probably get most of the opportunities at third base. And by most, I don't mean overwhelmingly so. I think, maybe 55 to 60% probably goes Zeke's way, the rest to Josh Smith. Now, that could change in an instant if Josh Smith is hitting well, because Josh Smith presents the better defensive option at third. It's not that Zeke is weak at third, but Josh Smith is really good at third. Let's go over both guys here quickly. Ezekiel Duran got off to a great start last year. As a matter of fact, around the All-Star game, we were talking about how Zeke had numbers that were comparable to some All-Stars in terms of the rate stats. He didn't have the sample size to justify it. No one was saying Zeke should have been an All-Star, but to kind of put in perspective how he'd been performing, you could look at his rate stats. The rate stats are, the averages, batting average, on base, slugging, OPS, and you could put them against some of the guys who were populating the all-star rosters and say, hey, he's comparable. He's better in this. He's maybe a little bit below in that. But again, he didn't have the sample size to justify it. And then in the second half, he really started to struggle. And I think, there are a couple things. One, not playing every day for a guy his entire career who's been used to playing every day was a tough adjustment. He also had to learn and play multiple positions, which I know when we play video games, you just press the square button and get the position to change or flip-flop with the other guy in the lineup and no big deal. But in real life, it's not easy for a young guy who's trying to establish himself as a major leaguer to also then have the burden of multiple positions, right? And Zeke kind of ran out of gas. He struggled down the stretch. I don't think that is representative of who Zeke is, right? I think Zeke is a guy whose arrow is probably pointing more towards the player he was in the first half, but is not quite all the way there. And he might get the opportunity early in the season to show that. What about Josh Smith? And would love your thoughts on this at 877-881-1053. Got some calls coming in. We'll get to your thoughts on this. But with Josh Smith, if you heard the network portion of the postgame show, you're going to hear what I said again. If you didn't hear it, then you're hearing it for the first time. Josh Smith last year, if you look at his numbers, you look at the baseball card, turn it over, see the back, you see a 185 batting average. That is no bueno, right? A 185 batting average does not play. Even if you're hitting a lot of home runs, it does not play. Josh Smith did not hit a lot of home runs. He had 6. Here's what I like about Josh Smith. I like that Josh Smith, despite the 185 average, had a 304 on base. Now, a 304 on base is below league average, but to have an on-base percentage nearly 120 points higher than your batting average shows an ability to get on base without getting hits. He has really good command of the strike zone. He's a very patient, disciplined hitter. He draws walks. He also gets hit by pitches, but whatever the case, he gets on base. Now, there are, I don't want to say just 2 types of players, but for the sake of this conversation, let's assess this as if there are 2 types of players. You got the free swinger who flashes brilliance, but he really doesn't have great command of the strike zone and swings at every pitch that is thrown in the state of Texas. And then you got the guy who is maybe more Josh Smith's profile. I present to you the former being Rougned Odor. Rougned Odor got off to a great start early in his career. He earned an extension. He had one putts, say, hey, this guy could be in the Hall of Fame one day because he had set records for most home runs by a second baseman at various ages. I thought, well, this is going to continue, and how are they going to keep him out? But what a young me was blind to was that when guys swing at everything and they are unable to make adjustments, I don't want to say unwilling. I think the word is unable. I think a lot of times that's a separated between the guys who do sustain success and don't. It's not a lack of willingness. It's a lack of ability to do it. But when you've got a guy who's unable to make those adjustments, they're going to peter out. People will learn how to pitch to them. Not going to be a challenge. And that was Rugi. And you got a guy like Josh Smith. Now, Josh Smith's not a guarantee to have success. But I think the guy who shows plate discipline first, and then maybe not as great eye-popping results, has more of a chance to improve and show sustained success than the guy who's got the better early results but zero plate discipline. And so I don't know if Josh Smith is going to have the type of year that demonstrates a step forward. I think he will. Because if Josh Smith hits 220, and no one is going to sit here and tell you that 220 is a great average, but if Josh Smith is hitting 220 and he gets on base 120 points higher than that like he did last season, all of a sudden that's a 340 on base. And you're talking about a guy who gets extra base hits at a rate that's higher than league average. His extra base hit rate's about 5 to 6% higher than league average. You're probably talking about a guy who's got a better than league average OPS, and you're asking that guy to hit in the bottom of your order? All right, there's nothing wrong with that. And what if Josh Smith can hit 240, right? And I think that there is more in the tank for Josh Smith. I'm not sitting here telling you that I think Josh Smith is going to develop into a bona fide everyday player, for all 30 teams, right? He's that caliber where no matter where he plays, you got to find a way to get him in there every day. I do think that the 185 version of Josh Smith last year is not the best version that we're going to get of Josh Smith. I think there is another step, maybe multiple steps ahead. And I think that if that's the case, you now have a guy who you can stick towards the bottom of your order. He's going to be a tough out because he's going to see pitches, and that's not a bad guy to have to go along with the really good defense, right? So that's if you're looking for, hey, what's the positive outlook for Josh Smith? It's that. What's the negative outlook? Well, the negative outlook is that he's just never really able to consistently hit at the major league level. And so despite the walks, despite the patience, the hits aren't going to come. And when that's the case, you're still going to be able to draw walks, but maybe that number shrinks because pitchers aren't as scared to attack you, right? So they're going to throw more pitches in the zone. The opportunity to draw walks is going to drop just a little bit. All right, Evan in Houston. A little nervous about this. H-Town calling. We got Evan joining us here on Extra Innings at 877-881-1053. Hey, Evan.
What's up, Jared? Living in Houston is not by choice. The job took me down here, just to let you know by that.
Appreciate it.
In the DFW. I had a question about Jared Walsh. I've been impressed with him here in the early goings. What's his role going to be when, Lowe eventually gets back and becomes that everyday first baseman?
It's a great question, Evan. And a lot of times with these sorts of questions, my favorite answer, because it saves me the trouble of having to untangle a gnarly knot, is, hey, this thing's probably going to just play itself out. Let's be patient. And the answers will come because someone's going to get hurt or someone is not going to perform well, and it's going to create openings, right? Josh Young getting hurt has already, created a little bit of a domino that can create some opportunities. But I feel guilty just giving that cop-out answer here because, as I said over the weekend, this is not like the starting pitching situation where Max Scherzer is more than a month away, Tyler Mally's probably 3 away, Jacob deGrom 4 months away, right? That one I can say, hey, let's worry about it later. This is Nathaniel Lowe could be 3 weeks away, probably 3 weeks minimum. My guess is it's not 2 weeks, although I guess that's not totally out of the realm of possibility. And it could be more than 3 weeks, but let's just say it's 3 weeks. All right. Jared Walsh is hitting well. Well, let's start with this. Jared Walsh isn't hitting well. Jared Walsh got off to a good start, but it really starts to tail off. All right, well, that might answer your question. But I think realistically, I don't think Jared Walsh is just going to totally crater like that. So Jared Walsh is not just totally taken a turn for the worse. He's still hitting well. Well, you're not just going to ignore Nathaniel Lowe. He won a Gold Glove last year, a Silver Slugger 2 years ago. He gets on base at a high rate. Even though we thought of last season as a down season for Nathaniel Lowe, a down season for Nathaniel Lowe is still an everyday player season. He had a 775 OPS. That's about 30 to 40 points higher than league average, right? He got on base 36% of the time. That's really good. He actually got on base at a higher rate last year than he did in his Silver Slugger year the year before. He just didn't Silver Slug as much. There wasn't as much extra base hit pop from Nathaniel Lowe. But Nathaniel Lowe, even though the thought might be, he's just not, he didn't have as good of a year. Still, that drop is still a guy who you're not just not going to play. The problem is both Jared Walsh and Nathaniel Lowe are lefties, right? So you could maybe say, well, how about we sit Nathaniel Lowe against lefties? Well, that's not putting Jared Walsh in a position to succeed. Neither guy really has true position flexibility. Nathaniel Lowe, I guess, at one point played third, but I don't think that's really a consideration. I guess because he hasn't gone on a rehab assignment, maybe he goes on a rehab assignment and they consider it, but I just don't get the sense that's something that they want to do. I don't think Nathaniel Lowe playing third is a legitimate option. As far as Jared Walsh, he actually does have a little position flex. He can play corner outfield. The problem is you don't really need any help there, right? You would need an injury to an outfielder in order for that to even enter the realm of conversation. But right now, you got Wyatt Langford DHing because you don't really have, that spot. All that to say, I don't know. I don't know what the Rangers are going to do, but I know this. Guys who can hit stay on major league rosters. And it's not like Jared Walsh can hit and just can't field. Jared Walsh is a fine defensive player, right? So those guys, if you can hit, you're playing at the major league level. Let's take a good example here. There's several of them, but Miles Straw. All right, for whatever reason, this is top of mind. Miles Straw was DFA'd by the Guardians in spring training. He wasn't even claimed. And that's probably because some teams had 40-man roster challenges, but he's now in the minor leagues. Miles Straw is a very good defensive player. Like, he is a top-level defensive player. But Miles Straw also is a guy who's got a career 625 OPS. All right, so below average offensive player, elite defensive player. That guy's in AAA. There are a number of examples of guys who are not very good defensive players, but they are very good offensive players, and they are everyday players for pretty much every team in Major League Baseball. And my point in saying that is not to compare Jared Walsh and Nathaniel Lowe's defensive abilities to that of a guy who needs to be a DH. Jared Walsh is a good defender. Nathaniel Lowe won the Gold Glove last year. My point in saying that is, if you hit, you aren't going anywhere. So if Jared Walsh is hitting, the Rangers are going to figure out a way to create a spot for him, even if that is buying time until there's more of a need. Now, is a trade a possibility? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Rangers would not at least be curious about potential options if they feel like there's a bit of a logjam. Because unfortunately, it is tough to roster both those guys. And I'm not rooting for anything to happen, but my guess is something will happen that will create a clearer path. But I just can't see the Rangers, if Jared Walsh is hitting, let's say, 270, if he's hitting 270, there's going to be some power involved. I just can't see the Rangers DFAing Jared Walsh. They can't send him down. And so I don't know. I don't know what they do. But someone, in all likelihood, again, I hate to throw this out there, put this in the universe. In all likelihood, the odds are someone will be banged up or someone will not be performing, and it's going to make the path a little bit clearer. And if it doesn't, it's one of those put it in the good problem to have categories, and we'll see how creative Chris Young and his team decide to get with the roster, and how creative Bruce Bochy can get in terms of playing time utilization. But that's a great question, and it's a real question that the Rangers might have to face here in the next few weeks as Nathaniel Lowe starts to ramp up. He's not quite there yet, so you think of from an airplane. The airplane hasn't begun its descent yet. So you still have time to think about this. But that's a great question by Thomas. That's a great question for sure. 877-881-1053. 877-881-1053. That's the number to call. 877-881-1053. Get those calls in. Quickly around the league, nothing crazy going on. The Astros are beating the Toronto Blue Jays 1-0 in the bottom of the eighth. The Blue Jays do have a hit, though, thankfully. But not many, unfortunately. They only have a handful. They have 6 hits. They have not been able to score. Framber Valdez got the start, and he actually pitched well. The Jekyll and Hyde of Framber Valdez continues because he just goes from looking like he's lost it to, nope, he's still a really good pitcher. Elsewhere in the American League, Luis Castillo making his second start. Again, that Mariners rotation is really, really good. He's taking on the Guardians. They are not very good offensively. Luis Castillo and Shane Bieber, the pitching matchup. Shane Bieber is a really interesting one. I want to put his name on the radar for Rangers fans. Even if the Guardians are somewhat in it, there's a good chance that they trade Shane Bieber. Now, if they are really in it, then they probably won't. But the Guardians are one of these organizations, unfortunately. I don't like it, even if it could benefit other teams like the Rangers. They are one of these organizations that they put very little effort into trying to sign their big name guys, and when they near free agency, they try and move them because they just don't have the appetite to spend that type of Skrilla. If Shane Bieber has taken a step back towards Cy Young Shane Bieber, he is going to be a hot commodity. If he is healthy, he is going to be a commodity. But he has flashed improvements in the spring and through his first start this season. Velocity is back up a bit. He went to Driveline, made some tweaks, and he's 3 scoreless so far, and he's a name to follow. That is a name I would follow if I were you because he is someone the Rangers could be interested in come deadline time. Not really a whole lot else going on of note. The Angels won. The Angels are 3-2. You can laugh at them all you want, but they've won 3 straight. Don't think they're going to be in the race, as the sample size grows larger, but I guess it's worth noting that the Rangers' division rivals, the Angels, are 3-2, the exact same record as the Rangers. All right, well, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. The Rangers and the Rays wrap up their 3-game series tomorrow. The rubber game with Aaron Savale on the mound for the Rays, Nathan Eovaldi getting the start for the Rangers. First pitch just past 12. That means our pregame coverage beginning at 11:30 in the Metroplex on your home of the Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. This has been Extra Innings, brought to you by our friends at Uber Eats, delivering home run deals all season long. For Alec Medford and Ross Lubinsky, for Ed Pendino in Tampa, for Matt Hicks and the voice of the Rangers, Eric Nadel, Jared Sandler, thanking you. Again, the Rays 5, the Rangers 2. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 11:30 on your home of the Rangers, 105.3 The Fan.
Just a little taste. It's an addiction. Let's just say it. Food can be an addiction, and it's incredibly difficult to break that cycle on your own. So why do it alone? Get the help.